Here's how my life imploded. My wife, the woman I'd spent 15 years building a life with, forgot my 40th birthday. A milestone. The big 4-0. Instead, she was busy celebrating the exact same milestone with her other husband, and his family, and their friends. I found out via a cheerfully public photo album on a social media platform I wasn't even supposed to know she used. So, while I was staring at a single, pathetic cupcake she'd left for me with a note reminding me to buy a gift for some guy named Marco, she was a few miles away, feeding a different guy a 5-tiered cake. I didn't get mad. I didn't scream or throw things. I just disappeared. I packed a bag, took every penny from our joint account, and celebrated my own independence. And I have never, for one single second, regretted it. The silence was the first thing that hit me. It was a thick, heavy silence, the kind that swallows sound. I stood in the doorway of our meticulously curated, minimalist chic brownstone, a bouquet of ridiculously expensive lilies, Elena's favorites, clutched in my fist. It was 8 p.m. on October 25th, my 40th birthday, and the house was as dark and welcoming as a tomb. Surprise, I muttered to myself, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. I'd been so sure. All day at the office, I'd been batting away thinly veiled hints from my colleagues. "Big plans tonight, Liam?" they'd ask, winking like co-conspirators in my own joy. I'd played dumb, of course. "Just a quiet one," I'd say, my heart thumping with the anticipated thrill of walking into a room full of my favorite people, with Elena at the center of it all, her smile as bright as the candles on my cake. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl on the console table. The clatter was offensively loud in the stillness. I flicked on the light. Nothing. No balloons, no streamers, no drunken friends hiding behind the sofa. Just our pristine, soullessly tidy living room, looking like a page from the architectural magazine it had once been featured in. A prickle of unease, cold and sharp, crawled up my spine. Maybe she was running late. Maybe the caterers had canceled. I walked into the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. On the vast white marble island, sitting alone like a monument to forgotten affections, was a single cupcake. It was a sad, generic-looking thing, probably from the 7-Eleven on the corner, with a swirl of buttercream that was already starting to weep. Next to it was a note, scrawled on a Post-it in Elena's elegant, hurried script. "Darling, don't forget to pick up the gift for Marco's birthday tomorrow. It's on the list. See you late. E." I read it once, then twice. My brain struggled to connect the dots. Marco? Who the hell was Marco? I scanned my mental roster of our friends, acquaintances, even the mailman. No Marcos. And then the rest of the note landed, a gut punch that knocked the air from my lungs. His birthday? Tomorrow. She had remembered some stranger's birthday, but not mine, not the big one. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was a profound and bewildering sense of disorientation, like I'd walked into the wrong house, the wrong life. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Elena's contact photo, her smiling on a beach in Tulum, a picture I had taken. I pressed call, straight to voicemail. Her voice, smooth and professional, filled the silence. "You've reached Elena Vance. Please leave a message." Not even a personalized greeting. When had she changed that? I scrolled through my texts. Nothing from her since this morning. A perfunctory, "Have a good day, darling." I opened our shared calendar. There it was, in bold, recurring letters. Liam's 40th birthday. It had been there for a year. A different, darker thought began to worm its way into my mind. I walked over to her laptop, sitting closed on the small desk in the corner of the kitchen. It was a sleek, silver machine, as elegant and impenetrable as its owner. I had never opened it. We had our boundaries, our separate digital lives, But tonight, those boundaries felt like a cruel joke. I lifted the lid. It was unlocked. And there, open on the screen, was a social media page. Not the one I knew she had, the carefully curated one with photos of art installations and industry events. This was different. Her profile picture was a selfie of her with a man I'd never seen before, his arms slung casually around her shoulders. They were both beaming. My gaze fell on the main feed, and there it was, a public photo album uploaded just 3 hours ago. The title was a digital dagger to the heart. Happy 40th, my love. I clicked. The first photo showed Elena, radiant in a stunning red dress, her arms wrapped around the neck of the man from the profile picture. He was handsome in a rugged, generic way, with a confident smile and a head of thick, dark hair. They were standing in front of a massive, multi-tiered birthday cake, the number 40 inches blazing in gold candles. Behind them, a crowd of people were cheering, their faces flushed with joy. The room was opulent, a grand, modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a glittering city skyline. I'd never seen it before. I scrolled, my hand trembling, photo after photo of the same scene. Elena feeding the man a piece of cake. Elena laughing as he whispered in her ear. Elena posing with 2 young children, a boy and a girl, and this man, Marco, all 4 of them looking like the perfect family. The captions were a torrent of love and affection. To the best husband and father in the world, one read, under a picture of Marco holding his daughter. It was from Elena's account. Husband? The word short-circuited my brain. The cupcake on the counter, the forgotten birthday, the casual note. It wasn't a mistake. It was a symptom of something so monstrously, so fundamentally wrong that I couldn't even process it. This wasn't just an affair. An affair is a secret, a sordid little tear in the fabric of a marriage. This was a different fabric altogether, a whole other tapestry, woven with threads I never knew existed. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the laptop illuminating the wreckage of my life, the forgotten cupcake my only companion. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of their laughter. I don't know how long I sat there. Time had ceased to function in any meaningful way. The moon crawled across the sky, its pale light tracing a slow path across our polished concrete floors. I spent the night in a digital rabbit hole, a voyeur at the funeral of my own marriage. Marco's profile was public. Dr. Marco Rossi, a celebrated pediatric surgeon. His feed was a wholesome collage of family vacations, school plays, and charity galas. And in so many of the pictures, there was Elena, my Elena, looking relaxed, maternal, and utterly content in a way I hadn't seen in years. She was the doting wife at his award dinners, the loving mother at their sons' soccer games. It was a life as real and tangible as my own, and yet completely invisible to me. I pieced it together. The logistics of her betrayal so audacious, so meticulously planned, it was almost impressive. His long, unpredictable hours at the hospital, her frequent business trips to art fairs in other cities. It was a masterpiece of deception, a life compartmentalized with the precision of a surgeon. The sound of a key in the lock startled me. It was 3 a.m. I didn't move. I just sat there in the dark, the laptop still open, a silent testament to her crime. Elena walked in, humming softly to herself. She flicked on the kitchen light, and then she saw me. She froze, her hand still on the switch, her car keys dangling from her fingers. The happy post-party glow on her face evaporated, replaced by a mask of cold, calculated composure. Her eyes darted from my face to the laptop screen and back again. She didn't even have the decency to look surprised, just caught. "Liam," she said, her voice perfectly even. Not a question, but a statement, an acknowledgement that the game was up. "Hello, Elena," I said, my own voice a stranger's, rough and hollow. "Did you have a good time at the party?" She closed her eyes for a brief second, a flicker of something, annoyance, regret, crossing her features. Then she opened them again, her gaze steady and unyielding. "We should talk." "Should we?" I gave a short, sharp laugh that sounded more like a bark. "I feel like I've already gotten the highlights. Happy 40th to Marco, by the way. Looks like a real banger of a party. The cake was impressive. Much better than this." I gestured to the sad little cupcake. "Sad little grease puck you left me." She walked over to the island, placing her keys down with a deliberate click. She didn't look at the cupcake. She looked at me, her expression one of weary resignation, like a CEO explaining a necessary but unpleasant corporate restructuring. "Liam, I never wanted you to find out this way." "Oh, you never wanted me to find out this way?" I repeated, my voice rising with a surge of incredulous rage. "Was there a preferred method? A PowerPoint presentation, perhaps? A carefully worded email? Maybe a singing telegram? Roses are red, violets are blue. I have a whole other husband, and you never had a clue." "Don't be dramatic," she said, her tone sharp. That's what broke me. Not the betrayal, not the other family, but her telling me not to be dramatic. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it. "Dramatic?" I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. "My wife, the woman I have shared a bed with for 15 years, has a secret second family, a whole other husband, children. And you're telling me not to be dramatic? What would be the appropriate reaction here, Elena? Should I offer to carpool?" "It's complicated," she said, finally dropping her gaze. "It's complicated is what you say when you're dating two people in college. This is a level of complication that would make a quantum physicist's head explode. So, uncomplicate for me. Who is he?" She took a deep breath. "His name is Marco Rossi. We met 8 years ago. I was curating a show and he was a donor. And one thing led to another, and now you have 2 husbands, 2 houses, and a dizzying schedule of lies," I finished for him. "Yes." The simple, unadorned affirmation was more shocking than any tearful confession could have been. There was no remorse, no apology, just the cold, hard fact of it. "And the kids?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you tell them when you're here, with me?" "They think Marco is away on medical missions," she said, her voice flat. "Doctors Without Borders. It's a convenient cover." Convenient? The word hung in the air between us, obscene in its pragmatism. My life, my marriage, our home. It was a convenient cover story for her real life. I wasn't her husband. I was her alibi. I stared at her. This woman who was both my wife and a complete stranger. The love I had felt for her just hours ago had curdled into something toxic and unrecognizable. It wasn't even hatred. It was a vast, empty nothingness. She had erased me so completely, so efficiently, that I felt like I was already a ghost. I sank back into my chair, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a strange, unnerving calm. I looked at the cupcake, then back at her. "You know," I said, my voice quiet again, "the worst part of all this? The truly, unforgivably, soul-crushingly awful part?" She waited, her expression unreadable. "You forgot my birthday." I woke up the next morning to the sound of the shower running. For a split second, a groggy, pre-caffeinated part of my brain registered it as normal. A Tuesday, Elena getting ready for work. Then the reality of the last 12 hours crashed down on me, a tidal wave of betrayal that left me breathless. But beneath the grief, something else was stirring, a cold, hard ember of clarity. I wasn't just a victim in this surreal drama. I was a choice, a convenience, a placeholder, and I was done. I slid out of bed, moving with a newfound sense of purpose. I didn't look at her side of the bed, at the slight indentation in the pillow. I walked into my home office and logged into our joint savings account. The number staring back at me was substantial, a testament to 15 years of diligent saving, of deferred dreams and responsible choices. Our future, I had always thought. I transferred every single cent to my personal account. The transaction was approved in seconds. A quiet little swoosh that sounded like liberation. Then, I packed a bag. Not the large suitcase from the top of the closet, just a duffel bag. I took my passport, a few changes of clothes, a copy of my favorite book, and nothing else. I left behind the expensive suits, the designer watches, the life I had so carefully constructed. It wasn't my life, anyway. It was just a set, and I was just an actor who'd been fired. I walked back into the kitchen. The cupcake was still there, a monument to my own foolishness. I found a Post-it and a pen, the same kind Elena had used. On it, I wrote 5 words. Happy birthday to him. I'm off to celebrate my own. I placed it right next to her note. A perfect little diptych of deceit and departure. Then I walked out the door. I didn't look back. I got in my car, a sensible, reliable sedan that screamed suburban architect, and I drove. I had no destination, I just drove. I drove through the city past the familiar landmarks that now felt alien and mocking. I got on the highway and picked a direction at random. West. Hours blurred into a montage of asphalt and anonymous rest stops. I didn't listen to music. I just let the hum of the engine fill the silence. With every mile I put between me and that house, between me and Elena, I felt a layer of my old self sloughing off. The responsible husband, the predictable provider, the man who never made a scene. He was dying, and I was letting him go. My car ran out of gas somewhere in the desolate, windswept plains of West Texas. I didn't even bother calling for roadside assistance. I just got out, left the keys in the ignition, and started walking. I left my old life on the shoulder of I-10, a monument to a man who no longer existed. I walked for miles until I reached a dusty, one-horse town. I found a pawn shop and sold my expensive watch, the one Elena had given me for our 10th anniversary. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. The pawnbroker gave me a few $100s, no questions asked. I used the money to buy a bus ticket. "Where to?" the woman behind the counter asked, her voice thick with boredom. I looked up at the board, a dizzying list of cities I'd only ever seen on a map. My eyes landed on one. Port Townsend, I said, the name feeling strange and foreign on my tongue. "One way." On the bus, surrounded by strangers, I took out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts, a digital graveyard of a life that was no longer mine. I deleted them all. Then, I opened a web browser and searched how to disappear. The bus rumbled on, carrying me further and further away from the man I used to be. I was a ghost now, haunting the highways of America, a phantom with a duffel bag and a pocketful of cash. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. The next few months were a blur of gritty survival. I was no longer Liam Vance, architect. I was just Liam, a guy with a strong back and a willingness to do any job that paid in cash. I washed dishes in a greasy spoon diner in Oregon, the steam and the clatter a welcome sensory overload that drowned out my own thoughts. I worked construction in Northern California, my soft office worker hands quickly becoming calloused and rough. I was physically and emotionally exhausted every single day, and it was glorious. I fell into bed each night too tired to dream, too broken to feel. I was shedding my old skin, one blister and one cheap motel room at a time. The man who cared about thread counts and organic produce was gone. In his place was a man who knew the simple, profound joy of a hot meal after a long day's work, the quiet dignity of earning his keep. I ended up in Port Townsend, a historic seaport on the tip of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. It was a town of sailors and artists, a place where people came to get lost and, sometimes, to find themselves again. The air smelled of salt and sawdust, and the constant cry of seagulls was a welcome replacement for the blare of city traffic. One afternoon, wandering along the docks, I saw it. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of the marina, listing slightly to one side, was a boat. It was a 30-foot wooden sloop, old and neglected, its paint peeling, its sails in tatters. A faded, hand-painted sign was nailed to its mast. For sale, as is. I don't know what came over me. I had never sailed a day in my life, but something about this broken-down boat called to me. It was a wreck, but it had good bones. It had a history. It looked like how I felt. I found the owner, an old, grizzled sailor named Gus, and used the last of the cash I had from selling my watch to buy it. He looked at me, at my rough clothes and my calloused hands, and seemed to recognize a fellow soul at a crossroads. "She'll be a lot of work," he warned, spitting a stream of tobacco juice into the water. "I've got time," I said. The boat, which I christened the Independence, became my obsession. It was my therapy, my confessional, my reason for getting up in the morning. I poured all the rage and grief and confusion from my old life into the physical act of rebuilding it. I sanded down the old wood, feeling the grain come alive under my fingers. I learned about engines and rigging and navigation from old books I bought at a second-hand shop. I taught myself to splice rope, to patch sails, to read the tides. My hands, which had once been designed to draw blueprints, were now learning to build, to create something real and tangible. I was rediscovering a part of myself I had long forgotten. The boy who used to spend hours in his grandfather's workshop, building model airplanes and dreaming of adventure. One day, while I was struggling to install a new bilge pump, a voice from the dock startled me. "You've got that wired backwards." I looked up, squinting into the sun. A woman was standing there, her arms crossed, a wry smile on her face. She had a cascade of sun-bleached curly hair and the most intelligent, piercing blue eyes I had ever seen. She was wearing faded jeans and a t-shirt that said, "Save the Salish Sea." "Excuse me?" I said, my pride slightly stung. "The bilge pump," she said, pointing. "The polarity is reversed. You're going to blow the fuse as soon as you connect it to the battery." She hopped aboard, as agile as a cat, and knelt beside me. She smelled of salt water and engine grease. "Here," she said, taking the wire cutters from my hand. "Let me show you." Her name was Sarah. She was a marine biologist, in town for the summer to study the local orca population. She lived on her own boat, a sturdy research vessel a few slips down from mine. She was fierce and funny and unapologetically herself. She started stopping by every day, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with a spare part she thought I might need. We'd talk for hours while I worked, about the sea, about her research, about the books we loved. I never told her the full story of my past. I just said I was starting over. She never pushed for more. She seemed to understand that some stories are too heavy to carry, and that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to just let them be. Our connection wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was slow and quiet, and as steady as the tides. It was built on a foundation of shared solitude and mutual respect. For the first time since I had left my old life behind, I wasn't just surviving. I was beginning to live again. A year passed. A year of sun and salt, of hard work, and quiet healing. The Independence was no longer a wreck. She was beautiful. Her hull painted a deep ocean blue, her sails crisp and white. And I was no longer a ghost. I was a man with a purpose, a future I was building with my own 2 hands. Sarah and I had fallen into an easy rhythm, our lives intertwined like the ropes that moored our boats. We sailed together on the weekends, exploring the rugged coastline of the Pacific Northwest, feeling 1,000,000 miles away from the world I had left behind. But the past has a funny way of catching up with you, no matter how fast or how far you run. We had sailed to Seattle for a few days to restock on supplies. While Sarah was at a meeting at the university, I found myself in a public library, a strange nostalgia for my old life pulling me in. On a whim, a morbid curiosity I couldn't explain, I sat down at a computer and typed my own name into the search bar. Liam Vance. The first hit was a link to a website for a prestigious architectural firm. My old firm. I clicked on it, a knot of anxiety tightening in my gut. And there, on their In Memoriam page, was my own face, smiling back at me. It was my old corporate headshot, professional and bland. Beneath it, a short, poignant paragraph. It is with great sadness that we mourn the passing of Liam Vance, a talented architect and a valued member of our team. Liam's passion for design was matched only by his kind and generous spirit. He disappeared a year ago and is presumed to have met with a tragic accident. He is survived by his loving wife, Elena. He will be deeply missed. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. Presumed dead? Survived by his loving wife? I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I clicked on the next link. It was an online obituary from the local newspaper in my old city. This one was longer, more personal. It was a masterpiece of fiction, a heartfelt tribute to a devoted husband and a tragic hero. It spoke of my love for hiking and my supposed fascination with solo wilderness expeditions. It painted a picture of a man who had wandered off into the woods and never come back, and it was all penned by my grieving widow, Elena. I scrolled down, my heart pounding in my chest, and then I saw it. A link to the public records database, a petition for a declaration of death in absentia, filed by Elena Vance, granted by the court 3 months ago. She had had me declared legally dead. The room started to spin. This wasn't just about erasing me from her life anymore. This was about profiting from my non-existence. I started digging, my fingers flying across the keyboard, a cold, methodical rage guiding me. I found articles about Marco's surgical practice, hints of financial trouble, of investments gone bad. And then the final piece of the puzzle. A public record of a life insurance payout, a substantial one, my life insurance. The policy I had taken out years ago to ensure that Elena would be taken care of if anything ever happened to me. She hadn't just moved on. She had cashed me in. She had killed me on paper to fund her other life. The audacity of it, the cold, calculating cruelty of it, was breathtaking. I wasn't a memory. I was an asset. And I had just been liquidated. I stumbled out of the library, gasping for air. The city streets feeling like they were closing in on me. The man who had found peace in anonymity was gone. In his place was a dead man with a score to settle. I met Sarah back at the marina, my face a mask of stone. I told her everything. The wife, the other husband, the forgotten birthday, and now, the final, ghoulish act of my own legal execution. I showed her the obituary on my phone. She read it, her expression shifting from confusion to shock, and then to a fierce, protective anger. She didn't offer pity. She didn't tell me what to do. She just looked at me, her blue eyes clear and steady. "So," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "What are you going to do, Liam?" The old Liam, the man who had fled in the middle of the night, would have run again. He would have taken the Independence and sailed so far away that his own name would have become a foreign word. But I wasn't that man anymore. A year of rebuilding a boat had taught me that you can't just paint over rot. You have to cut it out and replace it with something strong and new. "I'm going back," I said, the words feeling solid and real in my mouth. "This isn't about revenge, it's about resurrection. She doesn't get to kill me and get away with it." Sarah nodded, a slow, determined smile spreading across her face. "Good," she said, "because I just happen to know a very good, very hungry lawyer in Seattle who loves impossible cases." Her cousin, David, was not what I expected. He was young, sharp, and wore a t-shirt with a picture of a shark on it under his blazer. His office was a chaotic mess of files and law books, overlooking the gray waters of Puget Sound. I laid out the whole sordid story, expecting him to laugh me out of his office. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a predatory excitement. "Let me get this straight," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "Your wife has you declared legally dead, collects a massive life insurance policy, and continues to live her life with her other husband, all while you're out here, very much not dead." "That about sums it up," I said. "This is beautiful," he breathed, like he was looking at a masterpiece. "This is the kind of case they make movies about. Fraud, bigamy, conspiracy. It's a legal grand slam." The plan we hatched was simple in its audacity. We wouldn't just reappear. We would do it in a way that would be impossible to deny, impossible to spin. We would pull the thread that would unravel Elena's entire, carefully woven world. Over the next few weeks, David's legal team worked with a quiet efficiency. They gathered bank statements, tracked the life insurance payout, and found the marriage certificate for Elena Vance and Marco Rossi. They even found the original vendor who had sold Marco's lavish 40th birthday cake. My role was simple. I had to become Liam Vance again. I got a new driver's license, a new social security card, a new bank account. The bureaucracy of proving you are alive when the state has declared you dead is a special kind of hell, but with David's help, I navigated it. Each new piece of official documentation felt like a victory, a piece of myself that I was reclaiming. The final piece of the plan was the timing. We needed a stage, a public forum where Elena's two worlds would be forced to collide. And thanks to the society pages of her city's newspaper, we found the perfect one. Elena Vance, the grieving widow and celebrated art curator, was hosting the annual fundraising gala for her gallery. It was the social event of the season, a night where the city's elite would gather to sip champagne, admire art, and congratulate Elena on her brave resilience in the face of tragedy. It was the perfect setting for a resurrection. The night of the gala was cold and clear. I stood across the street from the gallery, a sleek, modern building of glass and steel, watching the city's elite arrive in a procession of black cars. They were all there, the politicians, the philanthropists, the old money families whose names adorned hospital wings and university buildings. And they were all there for her. I was wearing a suit for the first time in over a year. It was a simple, dark suit, tailored to fit the man I was now, not the man I had been. I was leaner, harder. My skin was weathered from the sun and wind. I was a stranger in my own life. Sarah was with me. She squeezed my hand. "You ready for this?" "No," I said honestly. "But let's do it anyway." We waited until the event was in full swing. Then we crossed the street and walked through the gleaming front doors. No one stopped us. We were just two more faces in the crowd. The gallery was buzzing with conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses. I saw Elena standing near the center of the room, holding court. She was breathtaking in a shimmering silver gown, a picture of grace and strength. By her side, looking proud and adoring, was Marco. Dr. Rossi, her other husband. He had his hand on the small of her back. It was a picture of domestic bliss, bought and paid for with my life. I felt a surge of cold, clear anger. This wasn't about a broken heart anymore. It was about justice. We moved through the crowd, slowly, deliberately. I saw a few people I knew from my old life. They looked at me, a flicker of confusion in their eyes, then looked away, dismissing me as a trick of the light, a passing resemblance. To them, I was dead. The plan was for me to wait until Elena took the stage to give her speech. At the back of the room, a large projection screen had been set up to display images of the art being auctioned off. David, my shark of a lawyer, had a man on the inside, ready to switch the feed at his command. Finally, the moment came. The lights dimmed slightly. A hush fell over the crowd as Elena stepped up to the podium. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice smooth and confident. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight, for your incredible generosity and support. As many of you know, this past year has been one of profound challenges for me." Her voice caught, a perfectly timed quiver of emotion. The crowd murmured in sympathy. Marco looked at her with such love, such compassion. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Losing my husband, Liam, was a blow from which I thought I would never recover," she continued, placing a hand over her heart. "But his spirit, his passion for life, has inspired me to carry on, to make this gallery a testament to the beauty he saw in the world." That was my cue. I started walking. I didn't rush. I moved through the parted crowd like a man walking to his own destiny. A few people turned to look at me, their conversations faltering. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. Elena's eyes, which had been scanning the crowd, landed on me. Her smile froze. The color drained from her face. Her perfectly composed mask shattered, revealing the raw, unadulterated shock beneath. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marco, seeing the look on her face, turned. He saw me, and his expression was one of pure, uncomprehending confusion. I didn't stop until I reached the foot of the small stage. I looked up at my wife, the woman who had killed me. And then I smiled. "Reports of my death," I said, my voice calm and clear, amplified by the microphone she had just been using, "have been greatly exaggerated." A collective gasp went through the room. It was a sound I will remember for the rest of my life. On the screen behind Elena, the image of a painting was replaced by a split screen. On one side, a picture of the sad, lonely cupcake on our kitchen island. On the other, a high-resolution photo of Elena and Marco, beaming as they cut into his lavish 40th birthday cake. Then the images began to cycle. My driver's license dated 2 weeks ago. My new Social Security card. Bank statements showing the transfer of my life insurance payout into an account controlled by Elena and Marco. Their marriage certificate. My obituary next to their smiling family photos. It was a silent, brutal, and undeniable exposé of her entire web of lies. Elena stared at the screen, then back at me, her face a canvas of pure horror. Marco looked from me to the screen to Elena, the pieces clicking into place, his world collapsing in real time. The crowd was in stunned silence, their champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips. They were witnessing the spectacular, public implosion of a life. I didn't need to say another word. I just stood there, a ghost returned from the grave, and let the truth do its work. The aftermath was a hurricane. The gala erupted into chaos. The media, smelling blood, descended like vultures. Elena's carefully constructed world didn't just crumble. It was nuked from orbit. The story was a sensation, a lurid tale of love, lies, and a resurrection that was juicier than any soap opera. The legal battle was, as David had predicted, a grand slam. Elena and Marco were investigated for fraud. Their assets were frozen. Marco, discovering that his perfect wife and the mother of his children was a bigamist and a con artist, left her, taking the kids and moving across the country to escape the ensuing scandal. Elena lost everything: her reputation, her gallery, her freedom. Last I heard, she was facing a mountain of lawsuits and a possible prison sentence. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my life back. And I had it. After my testimony, I signed the final papers with David, reclaimed my assets, and walked away. I flew back to Port Townsend, back to the smell of salt and the cry of the gulls. Sarah was waiting for me on the dock, her smile as bright and steady as a lighthouse beam. The final scene of my old life was not a dramatic courtroom showdown, but a quiet evening on the deck of the Independence. We were anchored in a secluded cove, the water as smooth as glass, the sky ablaze with a million stars. The boat, once a wreck, was now my home, a symbol of my own rebirth. Sarah topped off my wine glass. "So," she said, her voice soft in the stillness of the night. "Any regrets?" I thought about it for a moment. I thought about the 15 years I had given to a woman who was living a lie. I thought about the pain, the betrayal, the sheer mind-bending insanity of it all. I could have been bitter. I could have been broken. But as I looked out at the endless open ocean, at the vast expanse of a future that was entirely my own, I felt nothing but a profound sense of peace. The anger was gone. The hurt had faded. All that was left was gratitude. Gratitude for the storm that had wrecked my life, because it had washed me ashore on a new and better continent. I turned to Sarah, this incredible woman who had seen me at my absolute worst and had chosen to sail into the storm with me. I took her hand, our fingers lacing together, calloused and strong. "My only regret," I said, a real, genuine smile spreading across my face, "is that I didn't celebrate my independence sooner." We raised our glasses, the clinking sound small against the vastness of the night. And then we just sat there in comfortable silence, two souls on a sturdy boat, sails ready, waiting for the morning tide to carry us toward a new horizon.